Welcome to Motivational Monday. This is Fed Razak, Senior Trading Strategist here at CMTrading. And today we're going to discuss how Abraham Lincoln, yes, Abraham Lincoln affects us today, at least me. But first, make sure to like, subscribe, and share if you do find value in this particular presentation. So Abraham Lincoln, yes, he does affect us all today. He had changed the landscape of the United States from a really repressive government where they enslaved so many black Africans for a very long period of time and mistreated a group of people that is probably one of the biggest stains on our history, or America's history. And I would say it's a stain on society just together in humanity, because it was so violent and it was so difficult and it was something that should not have happened, really. But one of the things that, was the becoming of Abraham Lincoln and how he became Abraham Lincoln was his youth. And he would pour himself into books and just really put himself as much as he can in his books. And, he did something that was, and it was highlighted. Maybe there was other people that did it as well, but it was highlighted that I learned about when he was a young student. And I when I did some history studying about him, not obviously because he did some phenomenal things for humanity just in general and was so courageous to do it at the time that he did it, almost bringing the country completely apart. I mean, it brought the country apart. There was a civil war. It was a bloody war. It was something that stained American history, okay? And hopefully we've learned something from that and we've grown from that. But at the same time, in order to become the person he did, he utilized 5 things. And I think that it's just so important for us today. It's a lesson for us today, for us to actualize ourselves. Now, when he studied and when he kind of absorbed information, he used as many senses as he could, right? There's, our mouth, there's our ears, there's our eyes, there's obviously smell and taste, but those don't so much apply, but you can apply them because they do have associations as well. But what he would do is he would utilize all senses when he was focusing on developing and studying. He would use as many senses as possible to absorb that information. And with that said, okay, when we're doing our work, okay, in terms of focusing on something or changing something, we have to use as many senses as possible. Now, there's been like the longest argument in history, and I've tried to really break this down as well. Does our thoughts create our words, or do we have words and then that affects our thoughts? And now this is 2 schools of thoughts, right? There's cognitive therapy where you're thinking certain things and then, kind of developed a repertoire as a result of that. Or you have something called neuro-linguistic programming where you're speaking something and that affects the way you're thinking. And I'll argue it goes both ways. How much more effective is it if our cognition, if our thoughts are aligned with what we say? How much more powerful is that if they're completely aligned? And I'll argue that sometimes it's, it depends on the situation, right? We have an inner voice that sometimes we speak. So those of you who are multilingual, right, will certain times you'll think in a certain language. And I know for myself, when I speak other languages besides English, my entire attitude, my entire body language changes from going from Westerner to Middle Eastern, at some point. And it's funny because friends had actually picked this up on me. And I thought that was very powerful, that when we want to change something specific, it's as many senses that we use that is that much more effective in empowering us to do that change, to change that pattern, okay? And it takes someone really to, number one, there's the 3 C's of cognitive therapy, which is really the 3 C's is catch it, check it, and then change it, which is thought patterns that we have. You first have to catch it. You have to see what it is, right? And then you have to check it out to see if it's really valid or not. And then you're at a point of empowerment that you could decide whether or not to change it. Now, that does take a little bit of an element of courage to do that. And granted, it's not easy, okay? It's definitely something that one has to work on repetitively. But the more times that we find ourselves in that situation, the greater the opportunity. If we change that association saying, oh no, I'm back in that situation, right? There's that guy that you don't want to speak to, and all of a sudden you find him and you're like, then you try to avoid it as much as you can, right? And if you change that to say, wow, that's an opportunity. I'm not looking at him as someone I need to avoid. I'm looking at him as an opportunity to change myself, to grow myself. That's completely a reframing of it. And the more times that we can find ourselves in these growth opportunities that develop us and kind of expand our world, because if we're avoiding certain situations in life, we're not really living life to its fullest and everything that life could possibly give to us. And I think that that's really an important point and an important anecdote on how one can actually hack your system into really just being a lot more fruitful in terms of making changes and effective changes for longer periods of time. Thank you for joining me for Motivational Mondays. We'll see you here next week.